I'm Simon Harper. I am a teacher, head teacher of technology and learning at Killara High School. And today I'm really going to talk about a journey that's been going on for me and my classes for a while, looking at artificial intelligence and how we can actually use machine learning and predictive analytics in our classroom. First of all, I'd like to start, how many of you are teachers? And of those, how many are secondary teachers? Okay, and primary, and yeah, okay. So these concepts you could use for both primary and secondary. That it's secondary level, so it's maybe a little bit higher. So for me, really, we always need to start with the why. Why is this important that kids need to know about artificial intelligence? Why is it that they need to understand how we're actually coding or and having a deep understanding of what's happening now and where it's going? So I'm going to start with, you know, the big why really, and it's been spoken about over the last couple of years, looking at automation, globalization, and collaboration, and how these are changing the way the work, home life, and society in general. So it gives us many opportunities for students to actually compete or get jobs that not necessarily in their own city, and it's opened up all these areas. It also, if we don't action this in the classroom, then we may not be setting our students up for success in an economy that's changing. And the thing that floors me about what's happening now is we're not talking 10 years, we're talking 2 years, 3-year increments. So learning's changing too. And I want to talk about students over on one side, and I want to talk about teachers on the other side, because lifelong learning is something that as teachers we tend to talk about a lot, but we tend to talk about it for students and not necessarily thinking about ourselves as those lifelong learners. Now, a good teacher is compelled to be a lifelong learner, but it's really intimidating when you start to look at what artificial intelligence is doing and how do we, first of all, deliver some of these concepts, get kids to actually work within these spaces and have an understanding. And that's where I'm coming from today. The thing about, there's the whole STEM agenda that's happening across the world, particularly our country, and STEM and coding. And I've had parents at Killara come up to me and say, look, my son's coding, isn't that wonderful? And I said, that's great, and why are they doing that? And they don't really have an answer for that. So really what this is about is that computational thinking. It's about problem-solving ability. It's about being able to collaborate in groups, but that the kids have that understanding. The thing about AI is we're really building on the giants. Now, can anyone tell me who that is? Who is that? It's Turing. So Turing, basically, when you look at it, he's the one who is credited with starting computer science and looking at artificial intelligence and actually starting to talk about that. And this is where we're starting. The key is, in the future, kids are not going to have to code every line of code. And that's where it opens it up for classroom teachers to start to teach some of this. Now, I am a TAS teacher, and I teach computing in stage 5, so 9 and 10. I have a particular interest in artificial intelligence, so I just want to talk very briefly that this is a Department of Education. I was asked to be part of a 13 in the state to actually talk about artificial intelligence and technology and how it's actually impacting our curriculums, our systems, and how we might be able to change that. From that, there was a symposium which brought every system from Australia, every level together, so representatives to go through and talk again as to how we can change that. The other thing, being a MIE expert, I was fortunate enough to go to the Educational Exchange Conference in Singapore last year. Now, we had an Australian Microsoft engineer that went out there and spoke about machine learning. And at the same time, he said, we're right up on the cutting edge. We want a couple of teachers to actually step through some of the lessons I've set up. And I thought, well, that's the in. That's where I'm going to do this with my students. And I did it in information software technology classes. Now I want to talk about how do we get those kids to do the leap? How do we get them to understand how important all of these skills are? So this is where the story starts. And my way may not be the way you do it. And it was a bit messy at times, and things went really well and things went really bad. But if we're all pushing to teach these skills, then we're doing a better job for our kids. So I'm just going to click. So I start by looking at a utopian ideal and talking to the kids, well, what is utopia? How does it look? And if you see there the Jetsons idea, the Star Trek idea, that technology is actually assisting mankind and has actually opened up opportunities for us to explore the galaxy and to be inclusive of all races. And are we feeling warm and fuzzy at the moment? No, not yet, because there's the other side, the dystopian. And using popular culture, AI has been portrayed in many different ways. And when you look at the Hunger Games and the rise of the machines, and as soon as you say AI, what do kids go? They go, Skynet, the machines taking over. Now where we sit, we have a conversation of where do we sit? And I know where I think we sit, but it's not in a utopian ideal, but it's not a dystopia. But the choices they make will either send us more that way to utopia or dystopia. Many things are driving this change, and we really can't talk to kids about this, explain all of the different things. Artificial intelligence is just one thing, but when you look, artificial intelligence is baked across a lot of things that we do. So you've got the Internet of Things, and you see the ads for 5G, and the controversy that's surrounded the 5G network, and is it going to be the Americans who are going to set up our 5G, or is it the Chinese? Because what the 5G does is it connects the Internet of Things that kind of works at the moment. So connecting road systems to cameras, to sensors in the car, to your phone, to facial recognition, all of these things become a lot more seamless. From all of these devices and sensors, we get big data. Social media, that particularly human side that I'm going to talk about, we have to have kids understanding that technology and that social media has great benefit, but there's also things about it that aren't so good. Robotics and autonomous vehicles. And we're going to talk about ethical principles and teaching kids those. That's why autonomous vehicles are not quite here yet, even though the technology is. It's really important to think about, and particularly with kids and teachers, well, what are our strengths? Because as teachers, a few years ago they were saying we're going to have a robot in there, that we're going to get replaced as teachers. But when you look at all of these things, these are the things that we do well. And I can just imagine my Year 10 IST class of 30 kids with a robot trying to stick chewing gum on the back and flip it over, if there wasn't that human presence and that empathy. And talking about the fact that this is where our power. The other side, what machines do really well. Okay, so when you look at that, they're efficient. I'm going to give you some examples while you're having a look at that. Is we're starting to see surgeons, accountants, lawyers. They're starting to be replaced, and the artificial intelligences do this more efficiently. But for our kids, the job landscape's changing, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they have to be those people who are maybe disadvantaged on the way we teach this. As I spoke, there's the democratization of code in general. So we've got AI in its many different forms, and I'm going to talk about breaking it down a bit to how we could teach this to kids. But everything's democratized now. You can take those devices, you open source and build different things, and these are the opportunities that we need kids to embrace. And they really need to start to understand those opportunities. Are we moving to a utopia, or are we going to do something that maybe sends us down the dystopian route? Now, this comes down to what I used in the classroom, is Microsoft Azure. And just to explain a little bit, there are the different apps. So we have the decision-making apps, we have the natural language processing speech apps, we have the vision apps with the, when you walk in, who's gone overseas in the last 2 years? And did you go into where your passport and you stand and the thing goes, well, that's actually looking at not only just your body language, it's looking at your face, and it's using artificial intelligence to actually, first of all, identify you, identify how you're feeling. Am I carrying drugs? Maybe I'm a bit nervous. And using these technologies to pick people up, or we've got accessibility, and there's a whole range of other things I'm going to talk later. Now, Liam, who was the engineer I was talking about at Microsoft, he said, look, here's some lessons, and set it up in a OneNote. Now, you imagine you're on the Titanic, and we all know this story. What happens if I'm in a lower deck? Am I more likely to survive or less likely to survive? So this experiment actually uses data set that came from the Titanic. Now this is where the machine learning and the analytics come in. Now what you don't realise is a lot of our favourite programs, this is Excel, has AI baked in there. And you can actually add these things in. And this is where, as a teacher, here's how we actually teach it. Okay, we actually let the kids have a bit of a play with it. So this is the Azure machine learning, and you add that, and what that does is it then links to the next slide that I'm going to show you. Well, actually not the next one. I used Microsoft Azure machine learning, okay, so that we can actually go, as teachers, we look at a whole range of metrics that come up, and we look at a historical, and we work out over time what our kids are doing. But what machine learning does is it actually takes that and it starts to predict where the kids could be, the gaps they have, so that we can actually action that and personalize their education much faster. And this is the power from the education side. So in this one, on the spreadsheet, it has the range. So we've got the passenger, survived, name, sex, age. Now, if I put in the ticket number, is that going to be a good predictor if I survived or not? Probably not. If I chose a part there where, what cabin? Was I in the lower part of the deck, the higher part? Yeah, that's probably going to help me. The cabin, name, and what class was I in, first, second, or third, is going to be a good predictor. So what we're doing in this first side is called cleaning the data. We're getting to know the data, choosing the data that's going to give us the best prediction. So this is where it gets fun. Now, at the end, I've got my details. You'll see this third one up there. That's a blog post that sets you up and it steps you through each of those steps so that you can do it at home and then take that into the classroom. So what it does here, this Titanic survival predictor, we put the data set in, then we actually add some algorithms. So it's a drag and drop. The code is already in there. And what it does, we split the data. So 2080, So we use 20% to actually test the data and see if this model's working. The other 80% is used to churn it through. Then we put certain types of algorithms, and it's all in this blog post because your head's probably spinning. I really was a bit intimidated, like, how do I do this? You go to the next step where you put different algorithms that actually sort the data on what areas you've chosen. Then we go to training the model. Now, when it comes to actually training the model, we're setting up our model so that I can then take the predictive analytics of the Titanic and put another data set in there, and it will give me reliable results. And this is part of what machine learning and artificial intelligence does. Now, I had the kids do that. It was a bit rocky for some. They really struggled and they're like, I don't get it. Where is this? It's not working. But I actually had about 4 or 5 students in year 10 got it done, and then they peer taught the others. And over about 3 lessons, we actually got there. Then, as an extension activity, I gave my students 3 different data sets. One was on the bushfires in New South Wales over the last 10 years. One was the air quality, and then got them to actually start a new model and actually using the steps that they'd been taught to actually start to get a predictive analytic model. Was it perfect? No. Did it work all the time? No. Did some students get it? Yes. Did some not? No. But we're actually getting their thought process going there, getting them to understand. Now, that was last year. Now, the really cool thing was this year, Microsoft and Education Changemakers said, look, we're having a challenge called the AI for Good Challenge. Now, Microsoft's had AI for Good challenges in the past for their engineers or for uni students, but this is the first time they've said to high school students in Australia, we want you to be the creators of tomorrow. Now, this is where we've got the people who come up with the ideas to make a difference in the world generally aren't the same people who code the back end so it's looking at getting kids to understand how that might work. Now, I'm not sure if this video is going to work for you. I'll have to ask. Guys, it will work? Okay. Okay. It's a good haircut, isn't it? Now, here we go. So I'll just play this to you first. No, it's not going to play. Okay. Let me tell you what he was going to say, okay? It's talking about the fact that this is an ad for Microsoft AI. Now, there's all the big tech companies have it. It's all democratized, but it basically is saying that the ideas that come from it, that it's only a tool. So how can we actually help people with accessibility? How could we use AI to actually improve the quality of our life, our environment, our oceans? How could we use AI to actually help with humanitarian action? Now, from that Education Exchange conference last year, brought 92 countries together, teachers from all of them, and it's very interesting to talk to educators in West Africa. As you can imagine, there's a teacher there from, I can't remember which country, but basically what had happened was they were able to sell something on the world economy because of the internet. So you can imagine AI actually really making a big difference in those areas. So what we did was it takes them through, first of all, what is AI? Then they look at, well, how is it in our lives now and how could it be in the future? And then looking at ethical principles. And I don't have enough time to go through each of those ethical principles. But looking at things like inclusive, is it inclusive? Is it fair? Is it safe? Is it reliable? And using different ideas, like an autonomous car. So I'm a designer of an autonomous car. Now, do I program it if this gentleman here happens to step out in front of the car when I'm doing 100, A, does it drive off the side of the road and go over a cliff and kill me? Or B, does it plough into this gentleman here and I'm safe? And these are the kinds of things that are happening way above government level, talking about, well, how is this going to work? But having kids understand that. So they've worked through, this is ongoing. This actually, the competition doesn't finish for another 3 weeks. But then what the kids are doing is they're working through a design thinking challenge to actually, first of all, think, well, what area am I interested in their team? So is it AI for humanitarian? Is it for environment? Or is it actually for accessibility? And giving examples of how we could make life more accessible for different people. This using OneNote. Now, the really big thing about this is the skills. So we're not just teaching them about tech, we're not just teaching them the content, we're actually looking at the enterprise skills that they're also going to need, those communication skills, the collaboration. And I know that so many people bang on and on about it, but as teachers we walk away and it's really inspiring, but where are the examples? How do I embed that in my actual practice? And I go away and it's reporting and assessment season, and 4 weeks later I'm tired, looking forward. How do I embed that? And I've forgotten what's said. So it's very much about putting those things in place and doing them now. But choosing your own line. And anyone a skier or a boarder? Anyone love the snow? So think of it at the top of the mountain, it's fresh powder, there's no lines, and you're going to choose your line down the mountain. And I worked in the ski resort for a whole year, for a season. It was amazing. So kids need to be able to do that too and choose their own line. Sure, as a teacher, you're there to facilitate and make it, help them along the way. And just like we did with the machine learning, some did a great job, some had real problems, and some understood, some maybe not as much. And finally, they're my details. Now, I always get someone ask me why I'm wearing an Australian flag like a cape. Is anyone going to ask that question? Oh, thank you, Nick. That was the Education Exchange Conference for Microsoft last year in Singapore, and they said everyone was coming in their national dress. So I thought, well, I've got the flag, we'll put it on our back, and I was the only one with a flag on my back, but it was great sort of coming together with educators all over the world.